Ooh, is there ever a Friday when you work 7 days a week?
You know what? But it still makes you feel good to know that there's a Friday, because it just goes, well, then by about 5 o'clock, well, or if you're me, 3 o'clock, a beverage is okay at the desk for some reason. That's all I'm going to say.
That's less true in clinical medicine. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah, you don't get that. You don't get that experience. I would agree.
Probably why Catherine and I chose communications and not something where we could actually hurt somebody permanently.
Yeah.
You know? Anything we do could be undone and fixed. so that's all good. So Erin, we've got, and voila. Am I saying that correctly? Shay's not showing her face yet. Do we have more people who will be hopping on, do you think?
So I have Rafe and Jonathan might be joining us as well.
Okay.
So Jonathan, I think, sent an RSVP in, but I'm not sure about Rafe, so might have to hold off on that.
Okay, no problem. The only reason I ask is just in the interest of everybody's time. We had, the core group on who were going to be participating. So we can dive right in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead. And then as long as it's recorded and it's available for other people afterwards, then I think we'll be in good shape.
And then do you have that recording started or do I need to do that,
Nope,
Brenda?
it's recording. It is being recorded. So
Okay.
Said is going to be recorded on this. So just so everybody knows, with our Bridge Club Zoom platform, we do record everything. We will provide Erin then with the link on email, a password protected link that he'll provide to all of you. And so the whole world is not going to be seeing anything we say right here. It's just going to be for you guys. So and he can decide when that link should be destroyed. So feel comfortable saying whatever you want to say, because this is not going to go to a cast of thousands. Okay. So Erin, do you want to kick off quickly, just reminding people why we're here? Or do you want Catherine and I to just jump in?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to just say hi to the faces that I haven't seen before. Carrie, Shay is still hiding. Noah is there. I've heard a couple of different times how to pronounce your name, Noah, but if you want to correct me, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's Nuala.
Nuala, okay, perfect. Yeah.
And Ray's just joining us here, so.
Oh. Good morning.
I listen to the call just on the side.
Okay.
Sounds good.
That's great.
So great to see you all. Thanks for agreeing to lead some of the breakout sessions. I think it's going to be really exciting. There's been a lot of positive response so far. And the idea here is just to get together and have a brief conversation as to some tips and tricks for leading some of those sessions to get the most out of them. So the Bridge Club has graciously volunteered to lead us through some of this because they've been doing this for a while, specifically with like 30-minute sessions. So we're really happy to have a partnership with them. So thank you, ladies, very much for agreeing to lead us through this today.
Great. Yeah, happy to. Catherine and I are both communication, this kind of thing for a while. Sometimes very successfully, sometimes we struggle through a little bit ourselves. So in talking with Erin, we thought if we could offer just a couple of, it would make your situation a little bit smoother as well. And Catherine, anything you want to pitch in before we dive in?
No, I'm freezing up a little bit on my side, so I'm just quickly turning everything off. So if you're seeing me move around, it's only because I'm turning stuff off.
I'm getting that a little bit as well from Brenda, but not from other people.
Okay.
Okay.
So it might be from Brenda's side.
Okay, so I thought it was me, so maybe you're right. So, okay.
I'm going to put
I am turned off. Everything's turned off.
Yeah, I just put my phone in airplane mode, so let's see if that helps a little bit as well. So if I start to freeze, just someone like...
She froze right there. Right then. You froze again.
Weird, because from my perspective, you all are just fabulous. I mean, nothing's going, I'm not getting any freeze ups at all. So strange. Okay. All right. All right, well, we're going to give this a try and see what happens.
Brenda, you need to log back in. You're going to have to log back in because you are freezing up every 2 But I'll get them started on a few things while you're logging in on timing on some key triggers as Brenda's going to actually go through some really great key 4 tips of things to remember as she is.
I'm afraid if I log out, well, I want to make sure I don't lose all of you guys if I log out and end the meeting. So, okay. So we're going to give this a try. So carry on.
Okay. So she's going to go through 4 main tips that really will be helpful in keeping you engaged as a moderator, etc. Here are just a few other little tips because how long are your sessions going to be?
They're going to be 60 minutes for each of the breakout sessions.
Okay, so timing always seems to be one of the biggest challenges, and now as my dog is now barking, is one of the biggest challenges, and that is because we get into the conversation, we're not aware of kind of what's happening. So we do encourage you to, whether it is your phone, whether you have an iWatch or whatever, giving yourself some time markers, whether it's every 15 minutes so that you understand 15 minutes has passed. And then at the end, you can set up your timers in advance. And then as you have 5 minutes left or you have 10 minutes left, just so you're triggering yourself so you understand the conversation's going to come to an end. Because as moderators, we get just as excited as everybody else. And we want to be sure that we're also keeping very time focused. So whether use your phone or if you have an iWatch, set up the timer so that they will trigger you to realize, oh, we only have a few more minutes left so that you're able to wrap up that conversation or dive deeper into another area of a conversation. But it looks like Brenda is back. She's on mute, but hopefully she is back and she can jump in. But I did want to go through the timing piece as a little tool to be using.
All right, let's see if I freeze up again. If not, I will, as Erin suggested, just join in via simple for you guys. Did it freeze?
It did.
All right.
You may want to try change your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, well.
So I'll hit your number 1 right away. So since we're conscious on time, the number 1 piece. So she really has this broken down is, basically 4 words: engage, confirm, maintain, manage. So the first one is on engage. And one of the things that we've learned very quickly from both a moderator perspective is to engage your audience right away. At the Bridge Club, we do it with a toast. We did not start today with a toast, but typically what we do is we start with a toast. But there's got to be some means by which you can generate energy amongst the folks in the room. One way, depending on the topic, to do this, and Brenda can jump in with others, but one way that you could do it is to simply ask people to write down, if they're standing and then not necessarily, but if they are seated, to write down immediately what they're hoping to get out of the session or what questions that they may have that they want to have answered. What we do know from an audience participation's perspective is often people have something in their brain they're looking for, they want to be afraid that they don't forget to ask. And so it stays in the front of their brain and they forget to listen. So as a means of saying, hey, we all have ideas, things that we want to learn, make sure you're jotting them down. It's a way to engage them that way. But Brenda, what else do you have on that category?
That's good. You hit the engage, which is the number 1. The second one is the confirm, and asking them to think about what they're hoping to get out of the session is a great way to confirm that they are actually engaged in the session, that they're listening, and that they are thinking through what they want to get out of it. So the third one then is once you know that people are with you and they understand why they're there and what they're hoping to get out of it, then how do you maintain that momentum going forward? You get sometimes 10 to 15 minutes into a session, especially in this world where we're always all checking our phones. And, just be sure you look up occasionally and look around the room and you can see, are you losing somebody? Is somebody doing something else? And to try to maintain that engagement with them, check in with them, say, hey, is this giving you guys what you had hoped? Did you understand what so-and-so just said? Do you have anything to add? And it's kind of a mean trick, but something I do sometimes is look at the person I know is not paying attention. And I'll be like, hey, Erin, it looks like you might have had something on your mind. Is there something you want to share with the group? But it kind of goes back to being that mean first grade teacher, but it works every time. And it pulls people back in again. And often they look distracted because they really are thinking about how they can apply something. And then you get them pulled back into the group a little bit and they're ultimately going to get more out of the rest of the conversation. So that's maintained as number 3. And I'll just tee up the 4th one here and then we can go back and talk about some of these others. The 4th one is manage. How do you manage the person who's not saying anything at all, but they want to? Or how do you alternatively manage the person who is talking constantly and won't let other people get a word in edgewise? Those are your two main problems. Or how do you manage the crickets is a third way that you get that too. So one of the things Catherine and I have found works for the Bridge Club anyway is when you see someone who's dying to say something, give them the opportunity to speak up. Again, watch their body language. Are they fidgeting around? Are they look like I kind of want to, but I'm waiting for my entree? And call them out and pull them into the conversation that way, just by calling their name. Say, Catherine, do you have something you want to add to the conversation? Or, hey, Catherine, it looks like you're thinking really hard. Is there anything that you want to say? And alternatively, to the person who is speaking constantly, it's really kind to say, wow, Joe, you have shared some really interesting thoughts with us. Let's give a couple other people a chance now to weigh in and to add to the conversation. So that's...
So on that one in particular, the other piece to manage, and this is one thing that works very well with Brenda and I's personalities, is energy levels. Just if the room is getting too high energy, it can be very exhausting. If people are laughing a lot, having a great old time, it is, as the moderator, to make sure that you're also bringing them back down to a level set at one particular point in time. Because if you're up here the whole time, it can be exhausting. But if you also have a speaker, a section that is really low here, then it is your job to bring that energy back up again. So it's that energy level in the room is also really important. And it could be, if the energy is down here, then you crack a joke to bring the energy up. And if the energy is down here, your voice gets softer, calmer, as a means to bring the room down. But it's an interesting read because I am very, very high energy. And the balance is that Brenda's able to come in and give everyone a big old relaxing moment after dealing with me for a long time, because I can keep people up here too high and it's just exhausting. So we want to bring them down. So that's another, when she's talking about the manage piece, that's all about the energy level in the room as well. So go ahead, Brenda. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's fine. So those are really the four primary things. We don't want to overwhelm you with stuff because you've got a lot you have going on in that particular half hour. So if you can just remember, engage them, confirm that they're engaged and they know why they're there, help maintain that level of energy in the room and that level of engagement. And then, try to manage, as Catherine was saying, the amount of energy in the room, manage the personalities in the room. Because ultimately you want everyone to walk out of your breakup session saying, wow, breakout session, saying, wow, I really learned something there. That was really great. It kept me thinking and wanting to have more conversation. Because in 30 minutes, you're never going to complete a conversation, but you're going to start little conversations that you hope will continue and will keep people thinking on to the next stage of the game. So
for crickets, when there's crickets, a tactic that we use as moderators is we always have a question or two in our pocket. And we do that as a means of letting people know that a question has been asked or something was given to you versus it being your question per se. It allows people to know that people are thinking. So for example, Brenda, why don't you give an example of how we've done that on the Bridge Club?
Okay, so say we're just talking about telehealth like we did with Aaron a week ago or so. If there was absolutely nobody asking a question when it got to the point where we wanted some engagement, Catherine and I would have a question in our pocket that we discussed previously with Aaron or that we knew we wanted to have people discuss. So we might say something like, okay, pet owners seem to really be wanting telehealth and are engaged with it. Why do we think veterinary professionals are so afraid of it? So that might tee up a total conversation that we knew we wanted to get into in the first place. So, other thing too is if you know somebody's going to be in the room who is a friend, plant some things.
Mm-hmm.
Have them help you out with that engagement. So talk with them and say, here's the topic. We might hit some rough patches. If so, would you ask this question? Would you tee this up? Would you ask me to repeat something to get someone then maybe saying, I thought about that earlier, but I was afraid to ask the question then, or I didn't think it was the right time. But that's the key, is really to keep the conversation going. You want to allow a few lapses because you do want people to think, and these are going to be obviously extremely thoughtful people who are attending VIS and who will be in these sessions. So give them a moment to think. but not too long, because then the energy is going to lag.
Mhm.
Is this helpful?
Absolutely.
Is this giving you guys what you had hoped? This is better be my check, my confirmation that you're getting from this what you had hoped to get from this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a question. I generally lead very small groups, like 10 people is usually my like sweet spot. And we're talking about potentially, Erin, you can confirm 70 or 80, you said potentially. Can you talk about difference in group dynamics between that amount of people? You know, I lead very emotional topics, so we try to keep the group small. So I'm trying to think about how I'm going to scale that to a big room.
Okay. Catherine, jump into this.
Well, first and foremost, not knowing the room setup, but I would work the room, meaning have you very mobile throughout the room so that you're able to watch the responses, whether they're at rounds or whether they're in rows, but you're able to really be able to get a handle on, are they connecting? There is something about being physically close to the moderator as well that makes people feel that they can also ask the question. So if you are always in the front of the room and the people in the back of the room may have a question, but they're not going to ask it because you're not close to them. It's an interesting human dynamic of the proximity of the moderator. So I would encourage, one piece is to work the room and be able to, you know, do the casual, how are you doing today? Or, you know, is this doing what you're hoping it's going to do? And that way it gives that permission to engage, even though they may think no one sees me, you know, I'm sitting in the back row. So that's one of the main ways of doing it so that they feel a part of it. I'll pass over to you, Brenda, for others.
Yeah, no, they're looking for you to lead. They really are. And that's sometimes, you know, both the wonderful and the terrible thing about being at the head of a discussion like this, because if things, you know, if someone's being really obnoxious in their discussion, or if people are being quiet, they're looking for you to get that conversation back on track. So again, that's where I think those 4 little, you know, being sure that you are really watching the room and that you're not focused in one area. As Catherine said, moving around helps a lot.
So another tactic is ask a broad question where people only have to raise their hands, where people don't have to actually answer, but instead they're raising their hands. Because then it allows you to go, so tell me more about that. Why? And so they volunteered by raising their hand, and you're able to then say, you know, give me an example of that. It's a perfect means and then, you know, sometimes there's the follow-up question. You ask the first question, you know, for example, I was just at a college tour this weekend or this last week, and how many of you want to do international studies? People raise their hand. Where do you want to go? People would put their hand up. And then those people that kept their hand up, it was like, well, where do you want to go? It's a perfect example of they're still willing to engage. They're much more invested. And so it allows you to pull them out of the shell that they've created. I'm just here. Just get me through this session. Nobody sees me, right?
Okay.
One of the quick things too on that, Carrie, is, you know, recognize that there are a lot of people in the room to just say, hey, we have a really big group here. I'm hoping you all have a lot to contribute. So when you do have something to say, try to keep it relatively concise and brief.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we can circle back around to you if you want to speak again. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're going to probably have 10 people who will speak up and the other 60 will sit there quietly. That's, you know.
Fair enough.
Normal.
The game I always play is how do you draw out the quiet people, because sometimes they have really interesting things to say. Just not the confidence to say it. Yeah.
That's funny.
Do you have any suggestions for potentially unruly people?
Oh golly, those are the most fun to deal with.
We're going to deal with that here in about an hour and a half. It all depends on what their unruliness is. So for example, and I'll definitely let Brenda chime in on this as well, but for example, if it's unruly because they're so passionate about the topic and they just really want to make sure it's not a convincing piece, but just they're so passionate, it means a great deal to them. It's easy to say, oh gosh, is everyone feeling their passion? You know, does someone else have another point of view? So it's an opportunity to say, this is fantastic, compliment them on their passion, but then be able to move them on to something else. That's for that person who's, you know, I love telemedicine, is the greatest thing on the planet. And they just won't stop. And you're like, we feel it. We love it. For the more unruly individuals, depending on how the group dynamic is. So we're going to be doing a topic here in a minute that does have an opposing point of view. Our session is purely a question and answer session. So we're going to be able to cut them off pretty quickly if people are trying to say, this is wrong, this is why you can't do this. But in those instances, you do need to let them have a little bit of runway and then say, thank you very much. We appreciate your point of view. Does someone have a counter point of view? Or how can you begin a a realistic dialogue, but you do need to lay some ground rules, right? So if it is a controversial topic, saying there are many passions around this topic, and we want to hear everybody's viewpoint, but we do ask, back to what Brenda said, that you keep it incredibly concise, because there are so many people in this room that we want to be sure that all the voices are heard. So if you do see me kind of raise my hand, it means that we're kind of exceeding that time limit. So set some rules on the front end on those more controversial topics. We all have thoughts and feelings with regards to the, veterinary debt and how we're going to handle that, and what should be done, or veterinary leadership, or whatever that topic might be. But it is really important here that everyone gets an opportunity to ask their questions or engage or be a part of this discussion. So we do ask that you are conscious on that. Brenda, do you have else?
No, yeah, I would just like to kind of summarize that. Recognize their enthusiasm and their passion. So you're kind of like patting them on the head, so recognize that. If they still don't move on, then you can try to be fun. Then use the humor. All right, George. All right, we got it. This is good. Let's let somebody else talk now too. We can take this to the hallway. And then if they still continue to be kind of like obnoxious or rowdy or just push home their point, that's when you do draw that line. And you're like, look, this is a conversation. This is a group of people who everybody is entitled to share their opinion, so we're going to stop. You're going to stop talking right now. We're going to give somebody else a chance. And I think when you say it with a little bit of grace and humor too, people don't get too mad usually. Sometimes you have somebody who's just kind of a jerk, but I doubt you're going to get many of those, just with the kind of people who tend to come to the Innovation Summit. But really, you're in charge of it. You're like, we're done with this part of the conversation. We're going to move on now.
So can you give us a potential example of what might be one of the topics that you're concerned about?
Almost any of them could. You could have somebody who comes in, like, say, for example, we haven't had a problem with this in the past, but like you could have somebody from PETA or something like that come in, right? So if things get to a certain point where things are a little bit uncomfortable, if you as the presenters, things get a little bit uncomfortable for you, then please let us know. There's going to be lots of people who are there who can help you. But just if you do get to that point, I think all the points that you've brought up have been really good. But if things get a little bit out of hand, then just please let us know. But it could be PETA, it could be, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes veterinarians are really impassioned by their ideas, and can get a little out of control sometimes, every once in a while. So anyone this could happen with, but just know that there's safeguards put in place, and there's people that you can reach out to really quickly.
Yeah,
if
exactly. I was just going to say to that point, if Catherine or I happen to be in any of the rooms that you are leading, and you feel you need a little bit of a rescue, feel free to call us out. If you see me in there and you're just like, hey, Brenda, I'd appreciate your perspective on this, or anything that you want to do to get engaged, we're not afraid. We will.
No, it's an interesting one. I do think, to be honest with you, Erin, I think it's going to happen more and more, because as the younger generations come up, this is not a millennials thing. This is the Generation Z. This is all of them coming up. We are more empowered than ever or before to vocalize our opinions and our perspectives. And so it is really critically important that you are prepared for it. And I do think recognize, let's say it is PETA that walks in. Thank you for joining us. This is fantastic to have you here. This is a dialogue forum. We do ask that if you do have a point of view, you limit it to 2 minutes, so that we can have everyone else speak as well. And if you'd like to connect with anyone outside afterwards, I'll be happy to help coordinate for you. So it's one of those things of really setting those ground rules down immediately. We're not going to not allow anyone to speak, despite what many people would like. That is not what you're trying to accomplish in these settings, nor is what Brenda and I do, trying to do that. And we do actually, believe it or not, Aaron, we have people say we don't want the opposing views stated on some of our bridge clubs, and that's not feasible. We want an open dialogue, as do you, but we need it honed in, careful, right? Everyone should have the full picture at all times, but keep those comments to a limited perspective. Looking at my clock too.
Other questions? Thumbs up, thumbs down, helpful? Give us.
Can you, oh yes, of course, you can hear. Fantastic outline, by the way, on diffusing opinions. I think that I'm probably likely in my session to have a bit of that.
I cannot hear you. Did everyone else lose him?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Wait, sometimes I can hear you. There you go. Try again.
Okay. Oops, you're muted. Hold
Now
on.
you're muted. There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you might need a translator. Actually, that's quite relevant to the question. No, but fantastic outline on the diffusing opinions. I think that's really, really important. Laying down the ground rules, I think it's presumably for people who are not vets. I'm not a vet. I'm a business person, and actually that's likely to create also a lot of emotion. And that's so clearly you recommend that we should just lay the ground rules and actually try to diffuse things as much as possible, which is great. But my question is totally different, and that's great because those were the questions. How much humor do people use in the US for
Lots.
those presentations?
A lot.
Yeah.
All the time.
It's a good, yeah, it's a really good level set. And people, I think, often will get the point very quickly, but you do it in a way that it's gracious enough for them too, that it's like, okay. So that's, yeah, I would go with it.
Absolutely.
Kevin, you had, yeah, something more.
I had a question.
Hi, John.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. I had a question. And I realized I was still on mute. So that my first question was much more eloquent. I promise. My talk is, Aaron, I'm actually about to send you a draft because I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty broad-based talk. Like I'm combining. I have people who I already have messages from friends who are attending that are not technical at all, that are interested in some technology applications, the people who do the actual computer programming for companies. So I have quite a wide range. And I've always struggled with this because I tend to be a little bit more on the technical side. When people are having trouble grasping a concept, and you touched on it a little bit before, but it wasn't I'm stating an opinion or an emotional, like, I want to prove something right or wrong type discussion. It was, I don't understand, and they keep asking either the same or trying to dive deeper and deeper. And how do I stop that without turning them off, without people either embarrassing them or making them feel like in the discussion, they're not getting it?
That's one where it's just like, I would love to talk with you about that a little bit further. But because we have so many people in the room and there's so much to accomplish in this short period of time, why don't we schedule time together to talk about that, either right after the session, get together during lunch, have a chat during the cocktail portion. But that's when you acknowledge, like, I want to help you understand this. I want to answer your question. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to deal with all of that right now. So let's talk about this together. Are you comfortable with that, John?
Yeah, no. I think I guess I always felt like, because I've been one of those guys in conferences that have asked question after question, as is my want, and what I don't want to do is I don't want to turn people off from investigating more without saying, hey, let's meet up, but that's also calling out like, hey, it's that interplay, like.
But again, that's where I think, like, the being a compassionate person, being a slightly, using a little bit of humor too. It's just like, hey, you have a lot of interest in this. This could be a really great discussion. Maybe this is a discussion best had between the two of us, or if anybody else wants to join in quickly too, let's take that discussion offline. I hate that term, but it does work. Like, let's take that discussion offline out of this particular conversation so we can dig in a little deeper. It does work.
Thank you.
That really does. So
yeah,
next
no,
time you're
I'll try to take care.
yeah, tell yourself that. Ask for time, outside the classroom, and then you can really dig into that specific area. It is hard when you've got so many people and so many broad interests and so many people thinking about things from a variety of perspectives. But I think that the keys are always acknowledging that their presence and that they have a question or an interest, and then offering a solution. Two things to keep in mind. You don't want to shut them off or make them feel like you aren't caring or interested in what they have to say, but recognize that they have an interest, and then offer that solution.
So something that I've done in the past is when that sort of thing is happening and somebody's speaking again and again and again about something, and you get the sense that maybe this is just like a two-person conversation rather than a group conversation, I just look at what other people are doing, and people will give you indications as to how bored they are, right? So you look around and you're like, oh, these people are like staring out the window, they're not engaged. I got to call the conversation back to something that's broader. But there are a lot of times when I'll get really deep into a conversation with somebody and it's actually really appreciated by the rest of the group. And so we're like pushing their thinking forward. Even though it feels like a one-on-one conversation, it's actually beneficial for the entire group. So I look to the rest of the group and I try to develop as much sensitivity to that as possible and say, okay, what's going on with everyone else? Am I still on the right page? Have I lost everyone? And then I use that as the means by which I determine whether to call the group back or not.
That's a great way of managing, that part of that managing the group too, by watching the body language. And if heads are nodding, or if people are leaning back like this with their legs crossed and their arms crossed, then, if you see 75% of the audience doing that, then it's probably time to move on. But if they're all leaning forward and nodding or taking notes, then, maybe you've hit upon something. And this is a question for you too, Aaron, I think to help guide everybody here. How important is it to get through a list of predetermined questions or comments versus how much are you hoping that they will just get these people into interesting conversations and dialogues? Because that may guide too how quickly you feel like you need to move on to another subject versus let people grab hold of something that's important to the group and dig in.
Yeah, so on the one hand, I want to say it's entirely up to the leaders of the discussion. So if you want to get through a bunch of content and you really want to hammer those points home and you want it to be like a 45-minute presentation because you think these points are really important, or a 50-minute presentation or an hour-long presentation, that's entirely up to you. On the other, I don't want you to feel as though there's no expectations at all, right? So if you can find, usually, when I go into a group, I'll say, these are the 3 key takeaways, right? These are the 3 things that I want you to walk away with. And if we can hammer those points home and constantly come back to them in the form of a discussion or in the form of a presentation or questions or anything like that, then I know that those points have been made and I feel good about it. At the same time, people come to the Innovation Summit because they want to see next level thinking about this. You are experts in your domain, and so they want to see what you're thinking. And so if you want to just talk about what you see and how you see it, that's going to be really beneficial for people. So the takeaway from that is whatever you're comfortable doing is, and whatever you've prepared to do is what you should do. And if you can engage people more, that's great. And if you find that, there's just people want to hear more from you, then that's great too. Just whatever is going to make you feel comfortable, because inevitably what happens is your comfort level translates into their better learning experience, right? So the more comfortable you are, the more likely you are to be able to have a conversation with them, to dialogue with them, or to present material in a way that's going to make sense to them. So whatever you're most comfortable with is really how it should be structured.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't replan your presentation or anything. Although I will say fewer PowerPoint slides are better. Visual aids are great. A couple of slides here and there that, especially if there's something really detailed that they need to see to be able to see, hear, and think it through to understand it. That's one thing, but minimal PowerPoint slides and more of you. As I think Aaron was saying, you guys are experts in the things you're going to be talking about. You're looked to as leaders. So more time with you, I think, is what people show up to often see. So the less you hide behind PowerPoint slides and the better you present your brain for them, the more likely people are to walk away with really great feelings about the time they've spent. Yeah. So hope that helps.
It does.
Anyway, there's no perfect, I wish there were a perfect solution, but so to that point.
There's no such thing, right?
Right. Yeah. So to that point, I mean, I think honestly, just trying to look at, read the crowd a little bit and try to respond a little bit to their level of energy or body language is the most helpful thing. If you remember nothing else, look at the people you're talking to. Catherine is apologizes. She had to drop off. She had another meeting scheduled at the bottom of the half hour. So she wasn't abandoning us. She just had to go.
Sorry, Brenda, can I just ask Aaron a question, just a logistical question, if that's okay? So
Yes, This is your session.
Sorry, thank you. The breakout session last year, just to Carrie's point, maybe had between, I'd say, 15 and 50 people. Are we going to have microphones, or are we going to just talk to a room? And these are the classrooms effectively at is that the setup?
Yeah, so if you go onto the website, the program is there, and you can see the classrooms that you're in. So for yours in particular, it is going to be one of the classrooms as last year. So the podium there has a microphone if you want to use it, but I think the room is small enough that even just a regular speaking voice should be sufficient. But all the other AV needs that you would want are in there. So if you want to do PowerPoints, there's a computer there, we can load stuff up. And we've got, it's right after lunch. So if you want, you can, which is, make sure everyone has coffee. But if you want, then we can do like a little run through like 15 minutes before, just to make sure any of the AV stuff that you need is good to go.
And when do I send you my 70-page slide?
If you want to send it on the 10th, that would be great, because that's when I'll read it.
And can I ask a question, Erin? So the format, like for example, Rave's session is just him talking about business models, and then the medicine session that I'm part of, I understand is more of a panel. Is that right? So there are different formats. Because last year I was thinking about the ones I went to, most of them were panel discussions rather than sort of individual one person presenting something. So is it a real sort of mix-up? Because we're talking here about almost like moderating a group discussion, but actually the format's quite different for the different breakout sessions.
That's correct. Yeah. So there are 3. So there's 7 in total, and 2 of them are like more of kind of a panel discussion. Like there'll be a few people up at the front. And yeah, so they're all going to be a little bit different, and how they evolve is entirely up to that group. So maybe we can just shoot an email back and forth with myself and you. And we have a couple of other people who are interested in being part of the discussion. I know we talked briefly about this. And there's going to be other people as part of the other sessions who want to be a little bit more involved. But as it stands, there's just the 2 sessions that are specifically, these are the people that are going to be leading them.
Okay, so I'm then separately to this session to kind of have just with some ideas that I had. Yeah. So it's like some talking points, that sort of thing, just to make sure that we're on the same page. I see my job there is basically just adding filler. So some of the experiences that I've had, being able to add that to the discussion. I think the same thing with Deb. We all have different perspectives on telemedicine, and so just being able to add in. But if there are like key points that you really want to drive home and you want to take the lead on those, that would be super helpful for all of us.
And just a quick question too, from the perspective of someone who participated or was there last year and has been in a lot of panels. From the audience perspective of things, panels I think are most successful when you aren't everybody passing the microphone down and everyone answering the question. They're most successful when someone answers a question, asks a question, and then you among the panel are like, this person probably is the right person to at least start answering that question. Because by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th person, there's usually nothing really fresh to share. And you've lost the audience after the 2nd person has answered the question. So your time is better spent, and if the panel looks better if you have just a couple people answer the question, unless there's a broad variety of perspectives you really want to be sure are presented. So Erin, you can veto everything I just said, but I feel very strongly about that.
No, that's very good. That's really helpful.
At the end of the day, it's all going to be great. You guys are going to be up there sharing your knowledge and leading people who are interested in what you have to say. So you've all been in front of a lot of people before in your lifetime, so this will be nothing new. So I hope this has been helpful somewhat. Anyway, if you have other questions, please feel free to shoot Catherine and me an email, and we'll give you whatever guidance we have. Now, if it fails miserably, don't blame us. If it works fabulously, you can give us credit. But anyway, we're just here to try to help. That's all.
So you described the principle that bad ideas, just bad implementations. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly. And you never take claim for bad ideas, only take claim for the good ones, right? No, absolutely not.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. We appreciate that Aaron invited Catherine and me to have this chat with you guys, and look forward to seeing everybody next weekend.
Yeah, indeed. Look forward to meeting everyone in person.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you.
Have a great Friday.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.